Hi, welcome to Comptroller's Corner. I'm your host, Pat Curry, joined as always by Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder. Our top story today, the Comptroller has conducted an audit of the city's water division that found that overtime in that division has been costing taxpayers $1.2 million per year. Now, Mark, you had pointed out in the audit that adequate staffing for the water division could avoid some of these overtime costs that have cost taxpayers quite a bit.
Yeah, and there has been, I think we've been consistent in our audits. We have done these payroll audits time after time after time. One of the things, Patrick, that's most alarming to me is the lack of automation, and that we have requested it, and we're putting in other safeguards really to be able to secure and make sure that we're protecting the taxpayers at all times. But this is something that is manageable, I suppose, if you're the mayor and the administration. I mean, it's not like this is a shocking audit to them and that they don't know that there's inadequate staffing and that it's costing $1.2 million in overtime. They are managing that. They're making a decision that that's what they want to do. I don't necessarily go along with it. I think it's misguided. And a little bit later in the program, when we talk about fire, I'll be a little bit more specific about that. But this is something that the administration has decided to do. We are watching it, and we have made several recommendations, and we're hopeful that the department will, adhere to what we're suggesting.
Now, you had a feeling when you did the Erie Basin Marina audit, there was some investigating your office did as a result of that the overtime and the timekeeping procedures for the water department weren't where they needed to be.
Yeah.
Now, when you did that, it was because the former operator of Erie Basin Marina was also a city employee who earned a great deal of money in overtime. His son was also a city employee who earned over $40,000 in overtime and certainly year after year.
Yep.
You found that he was signing his own timesheets. There was a lack of control over the whole timesheet process, and there's a lack of oversight, and as you mentioned, a lack of automation.
Yeah.
Now, when you sat down and conducted this audit of this division, you found those same problems happening over and over again with improper signing off of timesheets, and even one employee who worked 24 consecutive hours in a single day.
Yeah.
And this was something that you've been talking about, how there needs to be automation, and we can't just use, as you call it, the Fred Flintstone era of timekeeping procedures, because it's costing the taxpayers money.
We are very fortunate in the city of Buffalo to have a city auditor who is a certified public accountant. He's very smart, and he's conducted several of these audits, and at the end of the day, Patrick, it's the same conclusion, and we have to suggest the same thing every time we do this for every department or entity. And so the time has come that we are preparing a major communication to the mayor, suggesting strongly that there's two areas that he and his administration really need to work on. One is automation, the other is overtime. And at the end of the day, if they look at it in a very serious way, then I will feel that we were successful in bringing this attention to the administration, and they have the elastic power to choose and to do whatever they really want to do. But we have the responsibility to outline and to show the direction that the administration should be going in, and that's what we have done in these individual audits, and that's what we will do in a communication to the mayor shortly.
Now, you mentioned the fire department. The overtime issues in that department make the water division look like small potatoes.
Yeah.
The overtime in fire department is the past fiscal year has been $9.2 million in overtime costs. That's up almost $2 million just from the year before.
Right.
Now, your office did an analysis of that and also an analysis of the number of vacant positions in the fire department. And you found nearly 100 or roughly 90 vacancies that, if they were filled, would reduce the overall need for overtime. And because they'd be paid at a lesser rate and not time and a half by earning overtime, that the city could save money just by filling some of these vacancies in the fire department and putting people to work, people that live in our community.
Again, the administration, they are doing this with knowledge. They know what they're doing. They know what the overtime expense has been over the last several years that the mayor's been mayor. They know that. I mean, it's very apparent. It doesn't take an audit or a report to show that, because they have to account for the $9.2 million each and every year in overtime. And so I think it's misguided. I think there are opportunities to employ young professionals from the city of Buffalo to join the ranks of the fire department. And one of the things, Patrick, that is very concerning, there are probably approximately 600 firefighters, and I'm told that there are nearly half who are approaching that retirement cycle, that they're going to be making that decision to retire. And so therefore, it's not difficult to put a class together, but it does take some time, and there are certain things that they have to adhere to. There are some federal situations that they have to look at. You have to hire somebody to write the exam. You have to do all sorts of different things. You have to score the exam. But at the end of the day, right now, the administration in the city of Buffalo, they have a list. They have a list of qualified young men and women from the city of Buffalo, and at the end of the day, it's my hope that they implement and put a fire class on immediately, and maybe even get ready for another fire class. You're always going to have overtime, especially within public safety units, policemen and fire. They have it a lot harder than most city employees. Most city employees, they may have a situation where a child is sick and they can't go to work, or a parent is sick, they can't go to work. But a fireman or a policeman, if they have any ailment at all, if they have a stiff neck, if they woke up in the morning and their back hurts, or they sprained their ankle, they cannot go on to duty that day. And so therefore, you can have all the classes you want. You're going to have overtime come in to call somebody, or they have an automation cycle that automatically will pick people to come in to go to work. So you're going to have overtime. But $9.2 million is a little excessive, and there are young people who are ready to go to work for the safety of our citizens, and we ought to employ them. We ought to employ them immediately.
And you did an analysis of this and found that if the city were to fill all 90 vacancies, it would cost less than $5 million, which would take a substantial dent out of the overtime cost of the city, because you wouldn't need as much overtime.
Right, and you would still have overtime and an expense for overtime, but it wouldn't be at that amount. Yes.
And it wouldn't be skyrocketing by $2 million in just a year's time.
Right, exactly.
So I want to switch gears a little bit to another audit that you just filed with the council. This was looking at the Buffalo Public Schools exempt administrators.
Yeah.
Now, these are non-union employees, and they are the administrators. They generally make a great deal of money. Most of the exempt administrators make over $100,000.
Yeah. And
your audit found, now let me just preface this by, your audit was conducted under the previous superintendent.
Right.
And it included 2 administrators that did not have the proper credentials to hold the job that they have.
Right.
That was a finding in your audit. But it also looked at the timekeeping procedures and payroll procedures for these employees, and it found out that they really aren't doing timesheets. They're just marking when they didn't show up, not working when they did work. There wasn't as much supervision supervising of their timesheets. No one was signing off on them. In occasion, they weren't even signing their own timesheets. So another thing that you recommended is that they complete some sort of automation of their payroll.
Yeah.
And you got a response from Superintendent Ogilvie that they're actually looking into that right now.
They're looking into it, but Patrick, the way that I view it, I don't know how seriously they're really taking it. I don't know if they think they really have to. So at the end of the day, the reason why it was important for us to do this audit is to identify and to make sure that we know who the employees are and what the qualifications are and what the contracts actually say. And so that's what we've done here. So the bottom line of the audit is to identify and to do an inventory. And that's what we've done. We've identified all of the employees. We've inventoried everything that needs to be in that file. We know where it is, and we've made several recommendations and assessments of what we found. So, and as you know, we always do anniversary audits. So this will be helpful to us in going forward because, quite frankly, there has been a revolving door with the superintendent in the Buffalo superintendents for the Buffalo Board of Education. So this will be helpful in future years to let the superintendents know that there are some criterion that we've set that's very, very important, especially when you're using taxpayer money.
And you also pointed out in the audit they might want to look at the amount of paid time off given. Each employee is given 40 days paid time off, which roughly comes out to almost 2 months of work and being paid at such a high rate that is a big cost to the city as well.
Maybe in the banking business that would be appropriate, but in the education business it's ridiculous actually.
All right, so another audit that your office just completed was an audit of the Office of Licenses, and that found that there's really a lack of internal controls in that division, that office, in order to be confident in their ability to receive money and account for it properly.
Right, yeah, and there's two things that are most concerning. One would be the delays. So therefore, when anybody in that office or any office has a responsibility of doing licensing, permits, or anything of that nature, it needs to be processed immediately. It cannot linger. It can't sit in a desk drawer. There has to be some process so that other employees within the division, in case one person doesn't come to work one day, that everybody knows where it is. So you're right, Patrick. There needs to be a system in place. And then most important, and this isn't the first time we've said this in the audits, there is no excuse, there is no reason for any division or entity within the city of Buffalo to be receiving money in their little office. That is why there's a Department of Treasury. They are equipped and they are trained properly, and they are also fingerprinted and everything else that you have to do when you are dealing with the public's money. These are divisions that aren't equipped to do it. They should not be doing it, and we're telling them in the audit, don't do it. And the commissioner, to his credit, and other commissioners have agreed with us, and they said they are going to immediately move into another direction, the city treasury. So mission accomplished.
All right, well, Mark, we have to take a brief break. We'll be back. We'll be right back with more Comptroller's Corner after this brief message.
The Buffalo Employment and Training Center is your one-stop source. The center conveniently brings employment, training, and other workforce services to customers and employers in a one-stop environment. And the center is open and free to anyone seeking employment. If you are out of work, not happy with your current job, or are looking to improve your computer skills, the Buffalo Employment and Training Center is right for you. We are conveniently located in downtown Buffalo at 77 Goodell Street with plenty of free parking. So, what are you waiting for? Give us a call at 856-JOBS. That's 856-JOBS today.
Hi, welcome back to Comptroller's Corner. I'm your host, Pat Curry, joined as always by Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder. The Comptroller has continued to pursue innovative investment that increase the rate of return on the city's financial holdings. Now, Mark, we talked about these in the past where you're able to find a school district around the state that is in need of money, and Buffalo has in a pretty strong cash position.
Yes.
Is the ability to lend them money, and we do it with a rate of return that is in some cases dramatically higher than what we're earning by just having the money in the bank account. Now, I wanted to talk about two revenue anticipation notes, they're called. Basically, it's money you're loaning out. One is a local school district, Niagara Falls School District. You'll be loaning $3.1 million to, and the other is Curious Joel in Orange County. Now, you have done a transaction with them in the past.
Yes.
And it increases the rate of return by up to 5 times than what you're currently earning in the bank. So you think this is a great way to have the city's money earn more than it would just be by just sitting in a bank account, and it's actually improving the city's bottom line.
Yeah, I wish I could take full credit for it, but I can't, because being an amateur historian that I am, this was done by a comptroller back in the 1950s. It was called idle funds. Not exactly the way that we're doing it, but the concept. And so his name was Chester Cole. And so what we're trying to do, Patrick, is to avert, 15 basis points is almost nothing in a money market.
That's 0.15%.
It's pathetic. And I've made it very clear to banks, it's pathetic. But you have to have a hammer.
Right.
Our hammer is that we were, over this weekend, I'm told, Buffalo was the talk of the town in Syracuse. We have a financial advisor, Capital Markets. He was in Syracuse this week. And for whatever reason, Syracuse is now on to what we've been doing over the last 2 years. And they were cheering about it. So that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, we've been able to do these deals that are 100% safeguarded for the citizens of Buffalo. There's no risk at all, and as you know, there's intercepts involved, so even if the school district we were dealing with were having a little bit of trouble, the city of Buffalo gets paid first, and it's guaranteed. And so over the course of the last 2 years, we have brought in around $100,000 that goes to the bottom line. And as you've pointed out before in previous shows, that could be helpful in terms of employment for firefighters or for police officers. And so it is something that we're very proud of. It could not happen without the know-how and the flexibility of our financial advisor, Rick Gansey, our first deputy, Ann Forty-Sherino, our debt management officer, Greg Szymanski, and our very own Patrick Curry, who knows how to do these types of deals properly and through the Office of the State Comptroller. We just can't do whatever we want to do. We have to adhere to guidelines and guidance. And I'm very, very proud of this, as you can tell.
Now, as you mentioned, these are safe investments. They've been fully vetted and approved by the Office of the State Comptroller. And another thing to note is that these school districts, it's a win-win for them as well, because they were being charged more by banks for their revenue anticipation notes, or they're borrowing any sort of note that they do in a short-term basis. And you're charging them less than the bank is. You're making them more than the bank would give you on the money, and you find an interest rate that's somewhere in the middle where both sides benefit from this arrangement.
Absolutely, it is a win-win. Quite frankly, whatever school district we're talking about, whether it's been West Seneca, which we've done deals with, or Curious Joel from Orange County, or Niagara Falls, they are in a gap situation. They have to fill a gap. They want to do it in such a way that's going to be beneficial to their district. They have an outlet in us. We can help them, and at the end of the day, the city of Buffalo benefits for us being in that liquidity position that we're in. And then we get to help our bottom line each and every year. So it is tremendous. We are going to continue to do it, and I'm going to continue to work with our first deputy and with Greg Szymanski to identify these opportunities that are beneficial to the citizens of Buffalo.
Now that we're talking about gaps and bottom lines, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the gap report that you filed with the council. Now, how this works is the city's fiscal year starts on July 1st.
Right.
At each quarter, every 3 months, the administration has to file what's called a gap sheet.
Right.
That explains basically where we were budgeted and where have the results come from that budget and what's the difference between what we expected and what has actually occurred. So at that point, your office is required by the city charter to file a report on the gap sheets that were produced by the administration. So in your response to the gap sheet, you mentioned some of the revenues that you're still concerned about, what you mentioned in your budget response that came out last May. Questionable revenues that are very risky to base your budget on, and some of these are sale of lands, cash refund from the city's ongoing streetlight audit, a capital project transfer revenue, state grants, traffic violation revenue, and building permit revenue. So these are all areas of questionable revenues that you identified back in May, and there really hasn't been any assurance in these first 3 months. I know it's not a whole year, but there hasn't been much assurance in the first 3 months that these revenues are actually going to come to fruition.
So, I'm completing my 3rd year as the Buffalo City Comptroller, and usually the first quarter gap report isn't very exciting at all because it's so early into the year. But for all the things that you've said is very concerning to me this time. Especially, there's 3 areas that you kind of mentioned that I want to elaborate on a little bit. The one is the sale of land revenue, which the city has identified $4 million. Now, they've already sold 3 properties already, and they've brought in about $800,000. So they are within control. They can do this if they want to. If they've put down there's $4 million out there, they probably have identified the buildings or what they want to sell. So that's a good thing. What I'm concerned about are the things that they don't totally control. There's 2 areas here, Patrick. One is the traffic violations. As you know, these are revenues that have to do with the New York State legislation, and it also has to do with the fiscal year that doesn't start until April of 2015.
The state's fiscal year.
The state's fiscal year. So I am concerned about the $3.7 million. I believe there will be a shortfall there unless the administration knows something specifically that I don't, and I don't think so on this. So I'm concerned about areas where the city doesn't totally control it. Same with the state grants revenue. As of our first quarter gap report, there is no evidence of the award. Now, what does that tell me? It tells me that we're really almost, even though it's a first quarter gap report, we're almost halfway through the year, and if there's no evidence of this award that exists, that's nerve-wracking to me. And so we write this in such a way to identify to the mayor and to the council clearly. We're not making a judgment. All we're saying is the facts are, at this moment in time, first quarter, we're not making it. And so if you know something, administration or council or the finance director, tell us so we can sleep easier at night.
One of the things that I mentioned as part of these questionable revenues is a refund from the city's ongoing streetlight audit. Now, that was included to the tune of $2 million in the budget, and that seems to be a little bit optimistic, especially considering any refunds we have to share with the contractor who's providing these services. So it would result in it would to get $2 million in revenue, you'd need a $2.7 million cash refund.
Yeah.
And that seems a little high compared to our last cash refund in the 1990s from National Grid was only roughly over $1 million,
Yeah.
and 600,000 of the was a 600,000 wasn't even a cash refund. It was a reduction in future years' costs.
Yeah.
So this is something that you've repeatedly raised concerns about, that relying on this to such a high degree is very risky in the case that we don't get such a high
Patrick,
refund.
I wouldn't put 1 penny in there, not 1 penny, because we don't control it, and that's the point that I'm trying to make on a couple of these areas where we see shortfalls already. If the city of Buffalo totally controls it, then we can make it happen. But if you don't control it and you're depending on others, we did this outside audit requested by the Buffalo Common Council, and just because $1 million came in, in the form of a rebate check 20 years ago, doesn't mean anything now. Times have changed, and so it's very risky, it's misguided, and it's something that you just don't do. And quite frankly, I hope something in a positive way happens, because when we begin to go to the marketplace next year, the rating agencies are very alert, very awake, and they will be asking about these types of things. And so we are on the record. It is not smart to do it.
Right, and your report also notes that even though expenses are tracking under budget, it likely won't be enough to offset some of these very questionable revenues that you pointed out in May could be as high as $15 million.
Yeah.
And another area that I wanted to touch on was that you had a recent retirement in your department.
Yeah.
This was a gentleman by the name of James Pajak. Now,
Yep.
he has a long, historic career with the city of Buffalo.
42 years.
42 years.
42 years with the city of Buffalo, and unfortunately for Jim and his family, he suffered a stroke about 16 months ago. He is a fighter, and his wife Barb and their daughters, they're all work together, they help each other, and so he did retire. Not only did he work for the city of Buffalo, and particularly for most of that time in audit and control and in the audit division, and so we're very proud of him. He also was the chief of staff for the Buffalo Common Council for several years. But it's also important to say that he was a veteran, and he was affiliated with the United States Army and the Department of Defense for nearly 35 years. And so this is a very good soul, a good man, a good family man, a good employee, and we wish him well. He is going through rehabilitation. He's doing speech rehabilitation. He's doing all sorts of rehab on an ongoing basis, and he's making tremendous improvements. I visit him on a regular basis and his family. We're very, very proud of Jim Pajak and his service to his country and to the city of Buffalo.
Jim had a great attention to detail, and he was really instrumental when your office took over the disbursement of federal housing grants.
Yeah. Without him, we wouldn't have been able to get through it, because it was a little shocking that we were going to be involved in the HUD Bureau business, right? And to have a guy with Jim Pajak's ability and his attention to detail was a tremendous asset, to us, and we're very proud of him and his family.
And we're proud of his service to the city of Buffalo. Mark, that's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us in Comptroller's Corner.
Happy to do it.
And thanks at home for joining us. Make sure to check out our website at city-buffalo/Comptroller, our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, our Twitter handle, and as Tim Russer would say, go Bills.